Hello, my name is Abir Doumit. I'm narrating this Economics 101 video for the Center for Freedom and Prosperity, and I want to share some good news with you. While it might not be evident, things are going great around the world. According to the World Bank, the share of people living in extreme poverty has dropped by about 75% since the early 1980s. To be more specific, there are lots of amazing and encouraging stories of economic success around the world that show that it is possible for poor nations to become rich. Let us look at some examples. Consider the tiger economies of Asia. Hong Kong and Singapore both used to be poor, but they now rank as two of the world's most prosperous jurisdictions. Taiwan and South Korea also are relative success stories, enjoying big increases in prosperity. What's the common theme here? How did these places manage to escape the developing world and become what used to be known as first world nations? A big part of the answer is increased economic freedom. Some of the main indicators being good rule of law, size of government, property rights, sound money, freedom to trade, and a modest regulatory burden. Belonging to the freest countries in the world greatly improves the average person's income. So it's hardly any surprise that Hong Kong and Singapore, which rank 1 and 2 for market-oriented policies according to the Economic Freedom of the World Index, have exhibited such tremendous growth. And while policy isn't perfect in Taiwan and South Korea, ranked at number 23 and 42 respectively, the private economy has enough freedom to generate lots of prosperity. But we don't find success stories just in Asia. Let's look at Chile, for example, which began the boom in the 1980s. It was no coincidence that growth took off when the South American nation liberalized its economy. And since Chile is now ranked at number 13 for economic freedom, the country's upward trajectory should continue. Ireland and Estonia are good case studies from Europe. Ranked at number 5 and number 19, these two countries have enjoyed long-run growth that pushes succeeding generations even higher on the income scale. And Botswana is a bright spot from Africa. It is ranked number 59, which makes it one of the most market-oriented nations on the continent. That has helped produce impressive economic gains in recent years. Policy, of course, could still be drastically improved, but it's nonetheless very encouraging that some good reforms can yield such good results. By the way, a small public sector is not enough to guarantee prosperity. Let's look at Lebanon, where I'm from, as an example. Growth continues to be anemic, despite the fact that my country scores very high when looking at the rankings for size of government. It's good, of course, that taxes and spending are low, but the problem is that we get a terrible score for rule of law, which encompasses things such as the quality of the legal system and the security of property rights. And we don't score that well for trade and regulation either. But what about alternative strategies to achieve growth? Some international bureaucracies would like people to believe that bigger government is a recipe for prosperity. Groups such as the International Monetary Fund, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the United Nations have an unfortunate track record of urging higher taxes for the ostensible purpose of promoting growth and development. I'm not joking. As you can see from the citations on the screen, they actually argue that developing nations should have larger governments. And they love euphemisms. They are advocating resource mobilization to generate stable resources so there can be financing for development in order to strengthen fiscal frameworks. In plain English, that's higher taxes, higher taxes, higher taxes, and higher taxes. You probably won't be surprised to learn, however, that these bureaucracies never provide any evidence for their novel hypothesis. None. They simply want us to believe that there will be growth if politicians can squeeze more money from the private sector. Sometimes, the advocates of this approach even argue that there are big governments in rich nations of the Western world, and that this is proof that high taxes and loss of government spending must be good for the economy. But the silly argument overlooks the fact that the Western world became rich when government was very small. As you can see, government spending in Western nations only consumed about 10% of GDP back in the 1800s and early 1900s when those countries became rich. And there was little to no redistribution spending until even later. In other words, countries like the US became rich first and then adopted policies such as welfare state and income taxation. The international bureaucracies want the opposite approach. They want less developed nations to adopt big government policies and then hope that prosperity will magically happen. but there is no nation anywhere in the world that has become rich with big government. To close, I want to reiterate that good policy depends on more than just small government. If sustainable economic growth is the goal, there is no substitute for an overall policy agenda of small state, open markets, stable money, property rights, and deregulation. Here's a chart that shows which nations are converging with the US. Unsurprisingly, it's the countries with lots of economic freedom. Deirdre McCluskey, the great economic historian whose bourgeois trilogy tells the story of how the Western world became rich, notes that what helps is laissez-faire policy and a culture that appreciates and allows entrepreneurship. If people in rich nations want there to be more prosperity in poor nations, they should encourage governments to stop harassing the private sector and instead focus on promoting the rule of law and property rights. The bottom line, classical liberalism enriches people. I'm Abir Doumit. Thank you for watching this Center for Freedom and Prosperity video. Please share it widely.